But welcome to the Nodes Voice Actions. So we're going to build an action today. We're going to go over a few things. The designing of the voice interface. We're going to actually create one in a dialogue flow. We're going to follow the steps and make it so. But before we go into that, we need to go into some terminology, like a one-on-one. What is a variable? What is an action? What are all those entities? So Emil will go into depth about that. And then we're going to go over all the components of Google Actions. So what are the elements within the interface? Because also the interface needs a little introduction. It's not Apple. So Nodes is a digital product agency. We are part of Monster Group, operate worldwide. We have originally we were based in Denmark and growing out, conquering the world for these kind of services. So it's digital strategy. I don't have to name them all, but we are good in lots of facets and lots of things. If you need any help with that, you'll know where to find me. Voice is something new we added to the mix, and we started doing that since this year, and it's going pretty well. We've had some clients doing in the healthcare section, which is very interesting because it's a lot of time doctors don't have, or nurses. So if you're able to accompany people along that process, it is a great deal of information gathering that people can do, and a very natural interface, definitely also for the elderly, project we also do with a lot of government agencies. Having said that, my name is Neas Wilbrink. That's Emil Bunk. He's our specialist for today. I'm the country manager. Our things are up there. And because Martin is in the room, I have to say I'm also a pilot. Cool. Emil, take it away.
Okay. Is this on? It's working? Perfect. Okay, so hi everybody. Before we start, I thought it would be wise just to go into like the basics of what all of these things are. I know this is a chatbot conference, but today we're talking more in the lines of voice. So today we'll be talking about Google's ecosystem, especially Google Assistant. We'll be working in something that's called Dialogflow, but I'll tap into that. But Google Assistant is the primary voice interface you will find on Google's platform. It's available on all of Google's devices, so you can find it, of course, on the speakers, but on most Android phones, it also comes pre-installed. On iOS, you can install it as well. And what we'll be building it today is what is called an action. That is the equivalent of an app. So it's basically a voice app, but it's called an action in this ecosystem. Just so you guys don't get confused when I'm talking about actions and not apps. Okay. So I remember there was something in the description of this today that we will tap into AI and machine learning and stuff like that. And yes, we are, but all of this is basically built out of that. It's tools that provide us the means to tap into what people have built so far. So when people talk about AI, it's actually a constellation of a lot of different sources of work. So for instance, natural language processing, machine learning, and under those you have specific small tools such as natural language understanding, or NLU, as you'll probably see some places, neural networks and so on. But I tried to simplify it even more. And just to let you know, when people are talking about AI today, it's basically statistics. It's making a computer guess based on a lot of data. Then we make a computer guess, and then we provide tools for doing all of this guesswork. So I will say the two most important ones for you to know for today is the one called natural language processing. So that is basically just saying that now we're in the world of computers, and natural language processing here is just try to do stuff with words. A lot of it is just counting words, but other times it would be trying to understand what is actually being said. And that's what we have in natural language understanding. So that is trying to grab something of meaning from a sentence. And if we go really basic, it's like what I set up here, it's making a computer guess based on data. So somebody has fed a lot of data into this, and now it's capable of actually making an educated guess on what is actually being said and grab meaning from it. So the components of what we're going to work with today look something like this. I stole this directly from Google. I simplified it a bit just to get started. So if we start on the left-hand side, we start with the user. The user says something. Then we have a device. We have one standing over here. Unfortunately, it couldn't connect to the Wi-Fi, but it records some audio, and that audio is then shipped off to Google. They do a lot of processing. They have the processing power. They do it quickly, and they do that using the Google Assistant. That basically goes in and say all of these words in that sentence is written like this. So it outputs just a text string. So that is what you actually work with in chatbots. But here we go from speech and then into a text string. That text string is forwarded to the tool we're going to use today, which is Dialogflow. Dialogflow has a lot of tools to grab meaning from these sentences, understanding what is the intent of the user, why are they saying this, and what should I map it to. With Dialogflow, we can also tap into what they call a webhook, and of course Google put in Firebase, which is their own service for doing backend stuff. But the backend stuff here is really important. Unfortunately, we don't have the time to do that, and I also promised that we wouldn't do any coding, so we won't touch into that. But basically, that's where, from an intent, we can then ask our own backend systems, our own back offices, what should actually be set back? What is the information that we need to provide the user? And here we have two different approaches. Now I put phrase as response on Dialogflow because it is possible to actually structure a sentence and output that to the client, but it could also be done in the back end. And from there, you can tap into other tools as well. We worked with Boom Chicago, and they wanted a robot on stage that could generate text and then actually output that in sketches on stage. And Dialogflow is not there yet, so it would be other tools you needed to actually construct real natural language from here. So Dialogflow, we can phrase a response. Again, that's just text that goes to Google Assistant. From Google Assistant, again, we have the text-to-speech. So it outputs a small audio file that is then shipped back to the machine, and then it says something that the user hears. And since, again, this is a chatbot conference, I think I also have to say that this is not really that different from a chatbot. So basically, we skip the two steps of recording audio and recognizing what's being said. We basically have people writing in themselves or selecting from a subset of options. So we just skip those two, and then we need some kind of distribution. So instead of Google Assistant and Google devices here, it could be Facebook Messenger, Slack, or whatever you would need to create your chatbot. But you could use Dialogflow for that as well. Okay, so back to this original one. And I think we need to start with an exception to what I just said. And that is when I say, hey Google, talk to which language in this case, it's not Dialogflow that does the machine learning and actually understanding. That is Google Assistant, because before this, we need to map whatever the user's intent is to a specific action. So our action in this case. So what they do is they rank every app that or action that is available on the platform just now, and that is also why it's important to get started, because you want to be high on that ranking. So whenever a user says something, then we can they try to map it into an action that can be opened. When the action is triggered, then it phrases a response, and that is sent back to the machine. Then the user can say something, tell me about Kotlin in this case. That is recognized as a language, and then a request is made for what can I say about Kotlin, and it goes back to the user. So those are all the different components needed to work with this ecosystem Google has provided. So the focus of today, we will be focusing on the most left-hand part up here. So that is, what does the user want, and how do they phrase that intent? How do we speak about the things that we want when we're doing interacting with these devices? And when we get stuff back, then how do we make sense of what the user said, and what can we grab of meaning from those intents? And how can we phrase a response that is also understood by the clients? So for the first session before the break, we'll focus on the user side of this, and Neas will take over for that bit. And then after the break, I'll dig deep into dialogue flow, and I'll try doing live demos up here, and you can follow along. And by the end of this first session, we'll just guide you how to get dialogue up and running. And then we can do it all simultaneously and start and build our own action in the second session. Yeah?
Isn't that awesome? You're going to leave with a voice service that you built. You're all going to be leaving as programmers. Who loves that? All right, yeah, there we go, there we go. We saw some hands, awesome. Does everything make sense so far? Do you have any questions? Is there anything that you go, I don't know, action, what triggers, what? No? Okay, cool, we're tracking, awesome. So let's go into designing a voice interface, because design of it is basically your first step you need to do right. Otherwise you're going to spend a lot of time fixing the stuff you built that you didn't intend to have built. We break it down in a following process, and for every bulb that you have there, of course we have workshops and other things, or some worksheets that you can go through. So identifying the use case, obviously first we're going to go, what do we want to solve? What is it, what's the interaction that we actually want to give a user in order to interact with my brand? Martin, I think, or one of the other sessions, goes into the VOI opportunity lenses. So there are 4 of them, and how you can decide which one is good for your business. One of them that Emil just said is, Google doesn't know how they're going to make money out of this yet, but they do know that they're ranking all their apps right now, and they are fizzling above. So if I am asking someone about Google, I want to eat chicken tonight, what wine can go with that? I will probably be sent to one of the wine Vivino, if they're up, I'm not sure actually, and nothing else. But if they're up high and you're also launching a wine platform, what are the chances that you're going to get in? So you have first mover advantage if within your use case. Mapping the needs, so that's what we talked about. What is that question? And I'll go into that in a second. We are then going to design the sample dialogue. Basically what that means is, if we speak to each other, we have a certain way of talking. And I think with chatbots it's already a little less, we expect it to be more machine-like. We know it's a chatbot, so it's going to give us a way of interaction. This doesn't suit at all in the voice ecosystem. We've done a test with some with elderly. 20 elderly got a device and they took it home, and we did this together with Google, some research, and they took like diary notes so they we could know what they were doing. They loved the fact that a lot of these services are very human-like, to the extent that they said, I feel less lonely having a Google device in my house. I can get up in the morning and I'm alone now, and I can say good morning, and another voice will say good morning to me. I mean, I was blown away just by that fact, this emotional connection to a device that you are recognized, and this is what you're going to do in the designing of the dialogue yourself. Obviously testing. Testing is a big part. You test with people, and you test with actual dialogues. You don't test with scripts, you don't test with writing, you test with actual back and forwards. Later on, what's his name? English guy, Ben Sauer is going to speak, yeah. And he's going to also talk about Wizard of Oz testing, I think. If you don't know what that is, go to his session and he'll tell you more about it. And then you build it, obviously. What do you build? Someone who's seen this slide before in a different session? No? Great. Awesome. Something new. David Lowe, former Amazon. Before that, he had a ticket company. And the first moment Amazon came out, he said, this is it. I am going to build a travel agency on voice. And he started mapping out his flow. Every single bit he could answer. Seats, seat change, window, aisle. No, I'm with a family, we need to sit together. Multiple bookings, merge them together. No, split them. Delayed, I want all that. He built them all. He launched. It was a big day. His company celebrated the launch, and what he found out, 70% of all the questions, the key question that people asked, where can I go for 300 pounds? That's it. 70% of all the questions were that. So if you go back to this and identifying a use case, use the testing already in a design sprint, a voice sprint, whatever you name it, to already engage with users to find that key question and spare yourself the nightmare of building the rest. All right? Cool. What we're going to go into today, the use case we've identified, because we all care about the weather, right? So we're going to go into weather. Building it, you're going to build it, and so we're not going to focus on that. So we're going to focus on mapping, not so much on mapping the needs. I'm going to go into some examples of the design. There's some principles that you'll need to adhere to. Some things that we use as a barometer after we created all the different text, and we have that one use case, and we start crafting the questions and then the response that comes in. One of the things is the quality of your information. Hello and welcome. You can ask me anything. All right, it's a tall order, you know. What's the time in Seoul? Sorry, I don't have an answer for that. If you're designing your voice skill, don't promise something that you can't make good on. You're guiding people through this process, and that's the only thing, the voice is the only thing that you can have to guide them to the right step. So, that's a nice one. Also, the amount of information. So, do you know what time it is? Yes. It's not very helpful. So, do you know what time it is? You ask again, and you go, the time in Utrecht is this, the time in Seoul is that, the time in London is this. Also not helpful. These seem very much like open deuren. I don't know how that translates very well. But je moet ze de kost geven if you see what people come up with. Because we are so used to coming with what the system says. Oh, the system has this information, therefore we are going to output the entire system information. You get an overload on choices. Maximum you can do is 3 if you really want people to know and to respond to what you're saying. But 3 is also a lot. Just imagine a conversation you have with someone and say, where do you want to go tonight? We can go there, here, here. Or you're at one of those restaurants, you don't get a menu. You sit down, the waiter comes by and they start listing everything they have. And you go, number 1? And then you hope it's good. Cool. So the amount of information, relevance, again with the time. It was this time last I checked. Last I checked, when did you last check it? What is going on here? So if you have stale information or information that doesn't change or isn't up to date because you know your database system is still running your batch process in the back end, be upfront to the user what that means, what the data is, or say, I don't know right now, check back in this time. Or I will send you an email or another way of notifications after you've figured out what the answer is. Okay? Many ways around this. And the manner. Again, a lot of time. Later on, it'll be the weather. Is it 10:30? No, it's 10:31. It's not really the gist of the answer, right? We're crafting these conversations so it's human-like. So we're trying to get that connection. So any data that you have will have to mold in a way that it doesn't have to have an exact match. We're looking for fuzzy matches. We're looking for a little bit more error within limits. Okay. These things we can all do in sessions where you just write out, you get your sticky notes and you start writing them all out. And then you sit back to back and then you start reading the question. And someone else, maybe a system operator or someone else in your database team who knows where the data is, starts responding. I know this data is here, I can answer this. And then you see if that conversation actually works. Record it, have someone else, so you're 3 people, write it down, and then start refining it. Using all those principles that you have and that I mentioned in here. Any questions so far? No? Cool. An example case. I did a few already, but what I'm trying to do here, we are talking about actions. So an action is like the overall, it's like the app, and then you have intents inside of it. Basically, you can see it as within my realm of answers that I can give. These are the specific answers that I can respond to. Because there are many ways people are asking for something. For instance, dinner. Find me an easy dish. I want to make something with chicken, and you can read them there, or Indian potatoes and tomatoes. These are all the same type of questions that lead to an answer. An answer that is answered by one intent. Some of them, and Emil will go into depth with that, some of them already have variables available. So I can make a selection of my recipes that I'm going to give back. Some of them are time-based or based on other metadata that you have in your system, and they will come out. But they all come out of the single one intent that you have. Cool. Now it's time for you to work. We had intended maybe a little bit more interaction, but otherwise we're not going to make the time. So we're going to go back to weather. And I don't know if you have pens and paper or use a computer, because you're going to sit together. And I'm going to ask you the following. What cases will the user be asking for? So in what cases will the user be asking for the weather, and how will the user ask for it? And I will give you an example which you can't use. What's the weather going to be like? Okay, that's off the table. So what are other ways of asking about something weather related? So think of a point in time on a day. This can be after you get up, could be lunch, could be dinner, could be a weekend, a Monday, a work day, a non-day. And then imagine a moment that can be influenced by weather. For instance, a wedding, or a wedding day, or just a party, or you have other special events that you can think of that will be influenced by weather. Maybe you go like sailing or golfing, and you need to be outside. Do you have that picture in mind? Do you have a moment in mind? You're like, I picture it now. Maybe it's a holiday you want to take. Yeah? So you got that? Now I want you to think for a minute and write down the question you would ask the machine about that moment. Okay. So you get about a minute. Who wants to share? I'm just going to go volunteers per table.
We can share. We have, will it be sunny this afternoon?
Mm-hmm.
Do I need to bring an umbrella today? Do I need to bring a rain suit? It's kind of the same. Will it be raining on King's Day?
Mm-hmm.
And can I go windsurfing today?
Awesome. Great examples. Using a lot of variables also, so making sure that you're capturing something on a special day. You want to share something as well? Same? Great. Go over to this table. Any volunteers? Sir, yes, sir.
One One is the same, the other one's, will it be nice weather for a barbecue tonight?
Barbecue weather, very contextual. Yes, I don't think today will be, not here anyway. All right, any questions over here? Who would like to go?
Not anything really different, but is it typical English weather? Or can I drive my motorcycle today? Or is it going to be the same as yesterday?
Nice, nice. Coming back to context, which we're also going to hit at. For context gives you something that you are supposed to know already, and then you ask a question based on that. So is it going to be the same weather as yesterday? Perfect, because we're going to touch on that too. Great. How are we doing here? Yes.
Doe het even zoals jij het doet.
Ja hoor.
Mixed Engels.
Do it.
In which way will I have been made in the Bible?
One more time.
What's it been made in Engels?
Oh yeah, I understand.
Iemand? What's it been made?
Wind in my back. Right?
Wind in the back? In which way will I have wind in the back?
Awesome, very good, because here we also need to know some context in where you're going. So we need to know what way you're heading, and therefore we need to be able to answer that question. We need that information, either from your user profile or something you said before. So I'm mentioning all these things because they're all relevant to making your use cases. All right. Who do we have over here?
Can I wear shorts today?
Yeah?
That's the one.
And there's a website for that as well, isn't
I
it?
know.
Yeah. Yeah, perfect. Thank you very much for sharing. Do you guys see, no, maybe I'll say it different because I said all the things. Are there other things that you've noticed about all the different ways of asking about the weather?
Sometimes people don't.
Yeah, okay, that's good.
Sometimes they don't always talk about weather. They're asking unrelated questions.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to be able to work it out. That's quite interesting.
Yes.
So like, am I wearing shorts today? Nothing to do with the weather.
It's very true. Yeah. Context very important. Any other observations that you had on the questions that were generated? No? Okay, cool. Because I think we're right on time, even running a little bit fast. So, wait for it. That was the sharing is caring slide. What I'd like you to do now is you all have multiple Google accounts, I think. What is going to happen if we are starting this and we're going from one service to another, it is going to create something in one thing and then trying to push it to another service, another account, and that's going to fail and you're going to get an error screen right on your computer. So rather than battling that at the moment, I would like you to log out of all your Google sessions, all your Google accounts, just log out, log out, log out, and then log in with the account that you want to use to actually make your Google action in Dialogflow, and then pushing it to the actions. Okay? And we did this just before the break, so as soon as you're done, you're free to go, come back, and we're actually gonna get cracking. Cool?
Okay, so just a small recap of the focus. So Nias went through some basics on how to phrase things, what to be aware of when you're expecting inputs from users, and also what they're expecting from you when you're answering. And now we're going to tap into Dialogflow, and that is where we are putting those thoughts into an action. So what are we expecting? How will the machine see that this is what the user is intending? And what can we grab from that intent? So to start off, the most important thing in this setup is called an intent. So that is, something is being said, what is the intent of that? That consists of three things. the training phrases. Training here is basically terminology from the machine learning part. That is when we're training the machine, we're making it better at guessing. So we're training it with training phrases. That is ways of saying the same thing that leads to this intent. The parameters of variables, that is the stuff we can grab out of the intent. All of these phrases have stuff inside them, and by grabbing stuff out, we can fill out these parameters. And last and not least, that is the response. So based on what was said, what are we gonna respond back to the user? So really simple case here, a training phrase for this would be, stating something is great. So that is my favorite, I enjoy that, that is awesome, I like that. That is really simple, they all mean the same. The intent here is stating, I like that. We can then respond very easily, that's great, I'm glad to hear, I like it as well, yeah, me too. That is as simple as it gets. And today we're gonna work on a weather app. So just to get started, I'll take the question that you were not allowed to use before, but I'm gonna use it. So how is the weather? And we're just gonna have the machine respond back, it's great. That's it. So I'm gonna try and move over here to Dialogflow. Let's see, I'm gonna do it like this. We can still see up here. I have a setup here, but we're gonna start a new project in Dialogflow. You're all logged in, right? No. No.
I was into the last one, I think.
Okay, we'll start off slow, and then hopefully you can catch up as well. So,
Just make sure everyone's logged in.
yes. So down here in the list, in the left-hand side, there's create new agent. If you don't have any projects, it'll probably look a bit different. So we just need to create an agent name. So in our case, we'll call it weather. That's the great part of being doing live demos. Looks like the server is unavailable. There we go. So as soon as you create that, you'll get into the intents, and you'll have two default ones. The first one being a fallback intent, and the second one being a welcome intent. So welcome intent is used for different services, for instance on the Google Assistant platform. Because you're saying, okay Google, talk to this app, then it fires what is called an event, and what is the response of that one will be the first thing people would hear. And we can also tap into that easily, and in here we will have the training phrases. So that is all sorts of ways of saying hi. And then if you scroll further down, you'll have the responses. Hi, how are you doing? So already now, without doing anything, we can tap in hi. And over here, you'll get the response from Dialogflow. Greetings, how can I assist? So that's really basic, but we want to try and create our own one. Let me know if it's going too fast. Okay, so we'll create an intent. You click the plus over here in the intent side. You need to provide a name. We'll call it weather. Save. Then you'll have all sorts of different expandables here. The first one we're going to look into is the training phrases. You click add training phrase, and here we can then say, how is the weather? And it's inputted there. Then we'll scroll down, and down here we have responses. We can add a response. It is great. You can put in raining as well. There we go. And then you click save, And then you'll see down in the corner, sometimes it will start already saying, oh, it's training, 8-inch training started. It goes quite fast. So there we go. And now I can just put in, how is the weather? It is great. That's it. Now we've created our first action. It can hear how is the weather, and it will always respond, it's great. That's quite great.
And it's possible because it's relative. It's a relative answer.
Yeah.
And if you make a typo, like an error, like weather with A, E.
So what you actually can do, we're scratching the surface here, but in Dialogflow you can also have it specially trained so that typos will be accepted as well. That's especially important if it's a chatbot. But when we're listening most of the time, Google won't misspell stuff, but it will mishear stuff. And it's mishearing that is a big issue for voice apps. Misspelling is a bigger issue for the chatbots, but you can also have it look at words and say, this is not a word, maybe they meant this. Okay, so let's go back here. That was a really simple case. So now if we look back into the same statements as I had before, but if we look into parameters instead. So in the first sentence, I didn't change anything. It's just, that is my favorite. You have the object of the sentence being that. And that is probably referring to something that was said before or something they saw. They're pointing at something, so we can't really use that in the voice interface. But if here we're saying, I enjoy Amsterdam, then you suddenly have something in the sentence that we can use for something. Emil is awesome. That you can also use to something because you have the name in there. I like dogs. We can also grab the dogs out of this. So for some of them, it's really simple. For instance, Amsterdam, that's a city. Google provides a lot of feedback or features for actually grabbing stuff out. So cities is quite easy to get. Given name, I actually didn't test it, but I'm suspecting it won't recognize my name. But for English names, it would work fine. And if you make a Dutch app, then it also have Dutch given names. So, and the last one, I like dogs. They don't have cis animals yet. But I'll tap into that afterwards because there's a way we can create our own parameters and stuff we'll be listening for. But for starters, I think we should try these that are already implemented in Dialogflow. So what I want to do for our weather app is now that I say, how is the weather tomorrow? Where tomorrow is the thing we'll be listening for. That's the parameter we want to grab. It's a sense of time in what the intent the user had. And then we'll respond by using that parameter and say tomorrow it will be rain. So now we have the rain as well. So we go back into Dialogflow. If you still have the intent open, you can just now try to tap in. Oh, let's go up to training phrases. And what did I say? I said, how is the weather tomorrow? And as soon as you do that, you'll see something happening because it already knows that tomorrow is a reference of time, or specifically it's a date. So now it's already said that, okay, there's a date in here. Should I lock that? Yeah, that's fine. And if we go down now and we go to action and parameters, and if you click manage here, you'll see a list of all the different parameters that are used in this intent. So what we're seeing here is that we have a parameter called date. It has an entity that is the parameter type, which is a sysdate. And then it has a value that is just called $date. And that's the important bit we need to know here. Because now we want to respond. And now we can say $sign date. That will grab out what was put into the parameter, and we can respond with the same stuff that is in the parameter. So tomorrow it is going to be rain. And then we click save. And now I'm expecting something to happen. How is the weather tomorrow? Oh. How is the weather tomorrow? Let's try it. So what happened here? Instead of saying tomorrow it is going to be rain, it's saying 2019, April 26 is it's going to be rain. We can't really use that for anything. But that's basically for when we start to have coders or developers on the project, then a date is much more sensible to use when you're actually searching in your backend for some sort of response. Tomorrow isn't that useful. But for our case, we would actually like it to say tomorrow. So instead of using the value it grabbed from what was said, we used the exact wording that the user used. We can do that by going down here. So now we have $ date, and we just put in a dot, and then says original. So the original value of what was said. And we click save again. And now it says tomorrow it's going to be rain. Yeah.
I asked a question with a question mark at the end.
Yeah.
So it's going to respond with tomorrow.
It actually it added the question mark? Yeah. Okay. That is something we cannot remove without actually tapping into the development part. No. Sorry?
Should have done something?
No, it's fine.
But it keeps saying I missed that.
So, did you click save up here? How is the weather tomorrow? Oh, you're also saying water. It might just be a misspelling there. Yeah. Go. Tomorrow is going to be rain. There we go. Yeah.
Now you have one intent with two training phrases.
Yep.
Where one has a parameter and the other one.
I'll just walk up here. Okay, so I just got the question. We have two training phrases now, one including a parameter and one that doesn't include a parameter. And both works. We've seen that. But what happens if the text response with a reference to that parameter is called, and there is no parameter? Dialogflow actually handles that. So from the different responses, it will always pick one, but it will only pick the ones where it actually has all the information it needs to do that response. So you won't get one that is saying missing value is going to be rain. That's not going to happen. So it will actually, based on all the responses that are in there, it will pick the ones so that it has all the different information that is needed. And that was also why I was seeing the it is great. As sometimes it will pick that even though it has the information. Okay, did that make sense? Perfect. Okay, so I'll let you know before that there doesn't exist cis animals in this system yet. Might come, but I guess all of you also have really special cases that refer to your own products or stuff like that. So we will be needing some way of actually grabbing that out of the intents here. For doing that, we'll be using what is called entities. An entity is a reference value and some synonyms. So in this case, with I like dogs, we can create an entity called animals. An animal will then have a reference value called dog and one called cat. And for each of those, it will have different synonyms. And then we can start typing in. And we can actually also have Dialogflow listening in on all the things that is being said. And if the phrasing match, then it will actually say, okay, this is probably gonna jump into this reference value as well. So it can also learn from people using the system to actually map things out for us. But we can create the first set of entities, and then we can start using that straight away. So, and it was great because this example was also mentioned earlier today. So what I want to do is I want to be able to say, will I need an umbrella today? So we already have most of this sentence except the umbrella. And what I want to do is I want to map umbrella to being terrible weather. So I want to be able to say, umbrella sounds like a good idea. I sense the weather will be terrible. So let's try that. Okay. So up here, I can type in, will I need an umbrella today? So again, it fetches out the date. It figures out that quite quickly. But umbrella isn't there. And we don't have anything that matches umbrella. So we can click create new. Say okay. So now it says umbrella, but actually, oh, sorry. Up here, what will I call this? Just so weather indication. And I'll call this terrible. And umbrella, it could be the tram, it could be raincoat. I think that was mentioned before as well. And for the sake of it, let's also create something that is less terrible. So having great weather, that could be your bike, a bicycle, it could be walking, to walk. So now we can save this. So from this view, you can now see we have the reference values that are the ones on the left-hand side. We have terrible, we have great. So terrible matches stuff surrounding an umbrella, a tram, a raincoat, and great matches bike, bicycle, walking, and walk. So now we can go back to the intent, go back to the weather intent. Oh, it forgot what I wrote before. Will I need an umbrella? There we go. We can also put in, should I take the tram today? And again, we're seeing it, weather being, a weather indication is being grabbed from the sentence and date as well. Go down here to the action and parameters, and again, we're seeing the weather indication down here. So now we can also start to phrase an answer.
Maybe we can check real quick if everyone's on.
Yeah?
Everyone is good on board?
Is it too fast? Sorry.
We forgot to save when we jump to the entity.
Yes, I did as well. Has people filled out the entity? Should I jump over quickly to the entity so you can, yeah?
Can the tram also be part of another group, let's say public transport, for another use case?
Yes, it can. And then based on the training phrases, it will it'll find out what entity is most important. But you can have sentences where two entities have the same synonyms and are also phrased in the same manner. And that's when we have to guess. And that's why I'm really stressing a lot of this is actually just the machine guessing. We're not seeing it up here, but every time we do stuff like this, it's calculating and then it's doing what's it called in statistics? It's calculating the percentages of how likely it will be, and we're never seeing that number, but it has a threshold for that. And some of it will just skip, and then it will go to the I don't understand that, and some of it will say this. It might be this happening, and then I'll respond with this. Okay. Have people created the entities and also the training phrase here? Yeah? Okay. So, like before, we have the option of grabbing this out. So now it turns up down here by just putting in the $sign. So here, what was it I was going to respond? I wanted to say umbrella sounds like a good idea. So this one is actually the original one. Sounds like a good idea. I sense the weather is going to be, and then we want to say terrible, and we have that in the weather indication. So you should have something like this. Okay, so just to run through this once more before we also test it. So weather indication, that was our entity. We know that we're gonna say umbrella to it. So it's gonna map the umbrella to terrible. So now we have a parameter called weather indication. The weather indication in its original value, that was the umbrella we were talking about. And the mapped out value, that is terrible. We know umbrella means terrible in this case. So weather indication dot original, that's umbrella, sounds like a good idea. I sense the weather is gonna be terrible. So hopefully this works. Will I need an umbrella? Can I spell that? Umbrella sounds like a good idea. I sense the weather is going to be terrible.
So what if you add, well, I need an umbrella tomorrow? Like, does it pick up the date?
Yes. So I created this one up here. Should I take the tram today?
But it's only when you create the training phrase. It's only when you create the training phrase. It's not going to deduct it out of the house weather tomorrow and one in umbrella.
It's a great question. We'll come back to that, and then I'll show you how we can actually expand on these. But right now we actually have the case because I was expecting that. But I'll also tap into how we can figure out what people are actually saying to the action and how we can help it train itself. And if you scroll down over on this one, so here I said, should I take the tram today? You can actually see what was extracted from the sentence. We have a date that is today, and we have a weather indication that is terrible. We cannot see the original values here, but we can still grab them. Is everybody following along? Thank you.
Yeah, okay, yeah, sure. We didn't make that.
No.
So should it automatically work if you would say, can I go by tram tomorrow?
Yes. Because no, it doesn't automatically work.
Can I go walk?
But yeah, so that's a good case because we didn't actually state any of the great sentences. But because we've put it in like this, should I, let's just to help it out a bit, but I'll show you the other stuff just in a minute. Should I take the bike today? Bike sounds like a good idea. I sense the weather is going to be great. So that was the other one. And we didn't actually put that into the training phrases, because everything is mapped to these entities, it actually knows how to swap these around. And it was actually my next step here. So so something we haven't taught it. Should I take an umbrella today? We taught it to say, should I take the tram today? So it's slightly different, but the structure of the sentence is pretty much the same. And then a completely different case here. Could you tell me about the weather just now? That is not something we've trained it to respond to. But let's see what happened. So should I take an umbrella today? And that works out. And what was the other one? Okay. Could you tell me about the weather today? Oh, it actually worked out. I was not expecting that. Could you tell me? Yeah, that might be why. Tell me about the weather just now. It's great. Okay, so now it probably actually trained itself, but just for the sake of it, I'll put in just something completely ridiculous. I'll put in horse. Okay, so what has happened now is that we have a user who said something that we weren't responding to. It had to go to the default fallback, and that will happen, and it will happen a lot, because people might stutter a bit while they're saying stuff, or they might change their mind just as they're about to say something, and then you have a broken off sentence. But it also might be because we didn't find all the right training phrases when we trained this. So now we have this case where it didn't know what to do. What we can do is go over in the left-hand side to what is called training. So because I've just been looping through on the same one over here, we haven't really ended the session or anything like that. It's all put into one conversation, and that started with a hi. But what you can see here is that I've done 13 requests, and there was one that had no match. So if we go back in here, then you can see all the requests. We could see what it mapped it to. We can see what it actually grabbed as parameters from each sentence. And then suddenly we have this down here that is horse. It of course doesn't make sense to put it into weather, but just for the sake of it, let's do that. So now I've told Dialogflow that as soon as you hear horse, that's also a request for weather. If I click approve, now it's training again. And if we go into the intent for weather, we'll see that horse is put in here. And this just streamlines the process of easily creating new training phrases for your action. So you can tap in here, you can see where did it go wrong. Is that because people were asking for something we don't want to respond to or we can't respond to? Or is it because they're phrasing it just a tiny bit different from what we were expecting? Can we grab some of the parameters we need? Then this training part can also help you out. I was talking, was it Stefan? I was talking to Stefan before, and he has the case where you want to do support through this. So you might already have a database of all the different questions coming in, and you can actually also upload that. So suddenly you have a bunch of different training phrases, and now you can start mapping them to different intents. So you can streamline that process of doing it really quickly. Okay. The next thing here, we're not going to do this, but I just wanted to tell you guys that as soon as you set this up, now we've been working in English, and we've created a bunch of training phrases, parameters, and responses. The training phrases and the responses are really tied into the language, but the parameters are the same. It's the same stuff we want to grab from the sentence. It's still the date, it's still the weather indication. The only thing we want to help Dialogflow with is how are people going to phrase it in this language? How is it going to respond in this language? How does the entities look in this language? So as soon as you click add language, it'll actually create the complete same project for you. It just doesn't have any training phrases. It doesn't have any responses. And then you can see what are the parameters needed for this intent. And then you could start filling that out as well. And the next great thing. So we've been working only in Dialogflow, and as I started out, the main thing in this ecosystem is the Google Assistant. So that's where you can actually interact with it with your phone or with a Google device. So really quickly, since we're getting out of time, from in here you can click in the right hand side, see how it works in Google Assistant. And this is why Neas wanted you guys to log out before logging in, because as soon as I do this, it'll create a project in Google Actions, and that is what we need to actually interact with this on the different devices. So from in here,
Did it work for everyone?
so what we're seeing here is a different simulator, but it does the same thing. I can type in and I can also speak to it. What we can also do is that because this is set up with my account, I can also now from my phone use the Google Assistant. It'll actually allow me to use this action straight away. No further setup. It's not practical if you want it out to users, but as a developer, it's quite nice that you can start using it straight away if you're doing this stuff yourself. But no more setup is actually needed. I think the only thing that's probably worthwhile is from the overview in the top left, decide how your action is invoked, and in here you can give it a name. I can just call it Notes Weather. And that's basically it. So now for Google Assistant on my phone, I can say talk to Notes Weather, and it will grab this action and I can start speaking to it. So that is also great for stuff like Wizard of Oz testing. You can actually just put a device in front of people. It can be the Google Home. Just make sure it matches the different accounts. It has to be the same account on both platforms. What's the time? Okay. Okay, so that was actually it. We managed, we did great. We actually created an action that is available. We can start speaking to it. everything works. Well, nearly. I just wanted, for you guys, when you get home and start playing around with it some more, please keep in mind that this is still a young platform, and because I'm sensing most of you are Dutch, you're probably also gonna try it out in Dutch. Google is mainly a US company, so the English stuff works the best. You'll see some small quirks here and there, but in general, you can start working with it and use it. One thing I just talked about developer testing. They have 3 other types, and that's alpha, beta, and production. For all of these, you have to opt in. That means you have to send a link to those people who want to try it. And for beta and production, there's also review. So for opt-in, really important thing, especially because we tried this on a Dutch project. If you can make an English version, always do. Because if you send this opt-in link to a device that is set to English, so the phone is in English, you cannot opt into this. It will just show you a blank page. So then you will have to have people set their phone to Dutch and then log in, and then they can switch it again. But it's really a hassle. Also, when they click on this opt-in link, they have to open it on their phone. If they open it on the computer, they will get an error. Then they will say to you, I'm just getting an error every time, and you have no idea where that error is coming from. They have to open it on the phone they're using. And then another great thing is that the link also has to be opened with a Google product on the phone. So send it to Gmail and then open it from there. Send it to Hangouts, open it from there. Another workaround can be to just copy the link and put it into one of the native apps on your phone. So put it into the Notes app or something like that, where you put in your notes on a daily basis. Put it in there and then click from there. Then it will tell you, ask you whether it wants, if you want to open it in Google Assistant, and you need to do that. So again, some quirks in there in the system. For review, it takes 24 hours for the beta. You can have up to 200 users, I think, and then about 3 days for a production build. I will say that Google has actually been really kind in the response and feedback on these reviews. So if we had small mistakes here and there, they would actually explain what could be done and how we could fix it. It won't just be the Apple App Store review where it's just, this doesn't work. They're actually quite keen on getting more products on these services. And you can also contact them directly regarding Dialogflow and actions. So they're really keen on answering, so don't hesitate to contact them. And another thing I've tried a couple of times now is that you really often you want to have some information that is spread across different sessions, so you want to recognize the user. They do provide some stuff, this is mainly for the developer part, but just so you know, they do provide some stuff so you can store things directly on the device, but it needs to be like a perfect storm for that to actually work out. So I would always recommend to do the account linking, and that is basically you allow the action to access the Google account used on the device. So from that, you can always recognize the user because they will have a unique ID, and then you can store all the necessary information somewhere else. So just so you know, storing information on the device is not really working at this point. You have to use the account linking, but it's not a big hassle. They streamlined it quite easily, so it will ask you, are you okay with sharing your personal information with this app? And then it's a small process they handle. Yes, that was it. Actually, Nea's changed the slide, so it's the first time I see it as well. If you have any question for me, you can use this link in the QR code and then put in your email in a survey, I think it is. Is that right? Yeah. Or you can use my direct email and contact me directly. I'll also stick around for a bit, so if you have any questions, you're welcome to join up here. Thank you, everybody.
Actually, so everything is recorded. And some things went faster than others. Maybe you have other colleagues you want to show it to. If you do open your phone on the camera page and you click that link, you go to a Google form. If you leave your email address, we'll send you a link to the video. And you can spread that out to your colleagues and they can do the same thing. Or if it went too fast in some steps, you can record it or replay it and then follow the steps again. If you do have any questions indeed, he's our guy, and he can answer everything. Cool. Thank you so much for your attention, and I hope you have a lot of fun with your Google Actions. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Yeah.